Shooting in India was certainly an incredible experience.
It was at times the most amazing thing, and at times it was a little bit too challenging.
But it's been incredibly special experience.
The Waiting City is a mystic-infused epic love story set on location in exotic India. The film is about Fiona and Ben, a young married couple who travel to India to adopt their child, Lakshmi. But whilst they're there, they're forced to wait while the adoption papers are processed, and they suddenly have to stop and reevaluate everything that they consider to be worthwhile. The film, I guess, is a portrait of their marriage. It's a love story, but it's also a journey of self-discovery for both characters as they're forced to confront and challenge each other about what they consider to be worthwhile. It's, I guess, an emotional and mature coming-of-age story.
Very nice.
Nice tunes. Enjoying Mr. Ben's and Wade?
I have a name, actually. My name's Fiona.
When Claire first told me the idea for The Waiting City, I was really excited. I thought it was a very beautiful story and one unlike one I've seen before. She really wanted to do something special with her characters and represent some Australian characters in a film unlike any film that I'd seen before.
It is such a lively, overwhelming, just everything is happening in this city all at once. And I think for a very stringent middle-class couple to come here, having been used to their comfort bubble of middle-class life, to come to a city which is absolutely giving them life in all its forms in such a raw way, felt like the right way to address all the themes of the story.
I had spent time in India previously and loved India as a place and always wanted to shoot a film here. Then when Claire told us about The Waiting City and she brought Jamie, the producer, and myself over to Calcutta, which was my first trip to Calcutta. And during that time we looked at some potential locations, but while I was here I really wanted to look at the light of Calcutta and the textures that were here and just the real Calcutta and the way of representing it. We wanted our film to have a realism to it for Australian audiences or international audiences that hadn't been to Calcutta before to really get the smells and the feel of it and the atmosphere of Calcutta. So that was the challenge for me, was to really capture that the best way that I could.
You know what, I tell you what, if you can find my car, I'll give you 50 rupees.
Okay, no problem.
Find my car, good luck. Don't forget us.
You would never be able to get away with this in Sydney Airport. There's no way we could do any of this. I just think this is quite extraordinary. It's quite amazing that the infrastructure and the support that we're able to be even here is fantastic.
It's pretty amazing being able to own Calcutta Airport for 8 hours and, you know, having a shoot here. Very chaotic. I think a lot of people's perception when they come to India that people from overseas, they're expecting chaos at the airport, and they generally get it, so that's what we're trying to recreate here.
I'm going to be looking out that way, so pick it up from the top.
The airport we'd always felt was going to be one of the most difficult locations to shoot at because it was very difficult to get permissions. We didn't have a lot of control there. Just allowing a film crew to go through into an area which is a off-limits customs area was difficult just to be permitted to do that. But it actually worked really well, and that was one of my favourite shooting days, I think. We got all the shots that we wanted in a very short period of time, and I think it looks fantastic. I think it's a really good opening to our film. It's got a lot of energy in there, and we used a lot of low barn out the front of the airport to create a real moody atmosphere.
Shooting in India is chaos, and but it was organised chaos. We did a lot of things that a lot of people that were more sensible than us would probably not do. We shot with small children, with animals. We shot at the airport under very strict conditions. We shot on the Ganges in a number of boats. We had massive crowds. We put our professional actors in with our non-actors. We had 2 cameras. We were up against all the elements. It was really hot and humid. But we had an amazing team. We had incredible Indian crew and cast.
Claire's fantastic. She'd written a great script, and we managed to assemble a really amazing A-list crew to take to Calcutta with us.
Well, she's embodies the Durga. She's definitely, this very strong, powerful woman, and she's very tall, and she was able to achieve things that most people would struggle with, much later in their careers. And we had, really difficult locations that we shot in for the first 3 weeks. We shot in an airport, we shot in a train station, we shot in a market. We did stuff that most people would say, is impossible, and she was the helm of that. And what I really liked about working with her was that we would have the script, and at times we would just sort of kind of not throw it away, but we'd put it to the side and we'd just riff on whatever we felt like riffing on, and then we'd get back to the text. And there was the possibility that something unexpected might happen all the time, and that as an actor is quite inspiring.
These are my favorite shoes.
Fee.
Okay?
Okay.
Very expensive, understand? Thank you.
Don't be such a bully, come on.
I'm coming.
I'd wanted actually to make a movie in India for years. I travelled here years ago and had this idea at that point that it would be amazing to come back here and do a journey story, like a travel story. That's something that had been on my mind in my subconscious, and just something that had seemed inspiring to me for that long. But what happened was I was Googling myself on the internet, and I read this article about Radha Mitchell, who's going to do this movie called The Waiting City in India, and this was the producer who was talking about it, and this was going to be the director. And I was like, what? I don't know, I'm doing a movie in India, this is really weird. So I called my agent about it to find out if they knew anything about this project. And so things sort of progressed in the way that they do, and I ended up meeting up with Claire and Jamie in Los Angeles, and we had this really kind of lovely meeting, and there was a sense at the end of it that we were supposed to be doing this project together. So it kind of happened in this sort of strange, sort of serendipitous way. It was something that I'd wanted to do for a long time, something that I guess, Claire obviously had wanted to do for a long time, and, Jamie was kind of the perfect producer for the project, and then we all ended up agreeing to work together.
Radha Mitchell, she's a fantastic actress. I've admired her greatly in all the work that she's done, which is incredibly varied. It also felt serendipitously like she should have done the role, both in the way that she came to know about our project, but also that she has a strong connection with India independently of the project. She brings a likability, a strength, an emotional intelligence to the role. She's not afraid to experiment with material, and she's incredibly giving and spontaneous in the way that we were able to work together to sculpt the performance of Fiona's character.
She's got such a kind of an ease in front of the camera. She's really got a really, I don't know, like a kind of a subtlety that I think is quite rare. I think that what you see face to face, as an actor is really great. And then having seen a few of the rushes of this film, you even see that so much more even comes out of the performance that you watch through the camera.
We're wondering if it's all right for us to look around, just to help us understand her a little better.
With the pageant scene, for example, we wanted it to feel that Ben and Fiona had arrived at the orphanage and just something different was happening. That this is an orphanage where things are happening all the time, and on the particular day that they arrive, there's a rehearsal for the pageant. So we didn't want to make it a scene that was purely about the performance of the kids and what was going on, but more of the way that Ben and Fiona stumble across it and how they see it and how they meet their kid for the first time while this is happening.
many of these students, some of them are blind, some come from very underprivileged locations. We went to people who in Calcutta who were using theatre therapy for challenged children. Okay? And then we cast from there different people who would be able to hold their own and not have too much stage fright.
But the thing with Joel is that he's so funny, he's so likeable, and he's got such a dynamism about him, but he's also got a lot of depth. It was quite complex constructing performances with those two actors so that we could make sure that the audience was never just on the surface, that we were always dancing between the literal and the underneath, the subterraneous meaning of the story.
I love being in this city. I love the way that you can turn in any direction, open your eyes and see something fascinating. I love the people. I love how kind of interested and how approachable and how approaching they are, and all the people on the crew.
As we worked together more, we found a point where we could inspire each other in a really nice way, where one would make a suggestion and the other would make a suggestion, and we'd both kind of riff on the character together. And that also is really great, to be able to have that kind of... We've got really some complementary ideas, and we found that the further and further into the story that we got.
What?
You want to end it over something that happened years ago?
That thing, right, is everything.
You know, he's just fantastic, and he's really a very witty and funny guy, and I think he brings a lot of his sort of Australian, manly kind of charm to the character.
Everything is here with us together.
We're not together.
Right.
Because I'm carrying you. Would you stop acting like a child and start acting like a man?
Ah!
Discover that Joel on camera has certain girly qualities, so we're just trying to make him look a little bit more manly. It's been a bit of a shock to production.
It's been quite an organic experience making up on the streets of Calcutta, but it's a different way of working. It's kind of been interesting doing it. We've only had to worry about a couple of really special things, and that's like, we did the guy's got the blind man, and we got some contact lenses made, and they were quite expensive.
When I first was having conversations about this film, they were talking about verite, using the cinema verite thing, and there was a notion that we would go and just shoot on the streets, and in my mind I was going, hang on, you know, this, you know, I was trying to picture what would happen if you walked out onto a street in Calcutta with a film crew. I had this feeling that you'd get mobbed, which is pretty much, you know, what happens.
It was a very locations-based film, so Pete's contribution was not only finding real locations or embracing locations that I'd already secured through the times that I'd been to Calcutta, but it was also imbuing each location with an integrity and a realism by not over-designing things, and then at points having to create big set pieces that had to be recreated in order to establish a look for the film.
It's a difficult thing to come and work in a country where you don't speak the language. My communication has to be done through Tanmoy or Shashruti, or with hand signals and demonstrations, you know.
So that
we can flatten it out.
Carpenters building things absolutely from scratch with no machinery, no lathes, no metalworking, no drills, or everything has been done by hand with love. You know, back home we have machinery that does things in maybe an eighth of the time. So the effort that has been put into all the work, all the construction pieces and all the scenic has been incredibly intricate.
Very good, Mrs. Benz. You better not get sick, Krishna.
It is holy water, Mr. Benz.
our main character, Fiona, is going to be walking into the water. So we've actually constructed a tank, which is like a swimming pool, where she'll be simulating going into the Ganges, because our little Western tummies may not deal with actually going into the Ganges. So that's our solution for that problem.
So this is a face pack powder, basically. It's cosmetic powder that we're using to colour the water to try and get a match. Seems okay.
Okay, now she's under. She's under totally, and you're just watching.
It was sort of a dare in my mind that I'll be quite happy to go right under, but you know, there's so many stories about the level of toxicity and pollution in those waters, and just over here there were like 6 pigs eating God knows what, and there was a cobra that swam by in front of Claire, and she was about a metre away from me, and so they'd prepared this little tank for me. So it looks like I'm going into the river, and I'm actually submerging myself into some kind of clay, muddy water from some beauty powder that somebody had found that people use as mud packs.
For me, I was most excited about because it allowed me to get camera angles that you wouldn't often be able to get as easily and as beautifully as the way that we did, where we'd be able to have the camera right on the surface of the water, looking back, seeing the beautiful background, seeing Ben and Krishna behind them, and have Fiona come emerging out of the water in the foreground of the shot. So it allowed us to stay dry and get a really great angle and do something really beautifully and really quickly as well. If we had have tried to do it with her in the actual water, we would have needed splash boxes and boats, and would have been quite complicated. Pete made a tank which we put a large window on the front of, and we coloured the water to make it look like the Ganges, and actually shot it in the back of our hotel. We were able to light it and have the control and keep dry and still be able to talk to each other without needing to put a camera underwater.
The reason for having a second camera on this film is largely due to the time constraints. We actually have about, in an ideal world, you'd spend about 45 days shooting a feature like this, but we have limited time, so we only have about 31 actual shoot days. So having a second camera allows us to get a lot more coverage in a short space of time for the director and the editor, so they have freedom and flexibility in the cutting room. It's a pleasure to work with Denson because his approach is refreshing and always, he's always someone I feel I can learn from. And in this case, I feel on certain situations where we are working closely together, it's very much a collaborative effort, which is great. The gaffer and focus puller and a whole lighting team and grip team who I've worked with many times in Bombay. So it's really a melding of two worlds, the Australian team and the Indian team on this film. And so far, it's really a beautiful thing. It seems to be working very harmoniously, very smoothly. Everyone's getting along well.
Lakshmi is our baby. And we have waited for her for years, and I can't even begin to tell you how hard this is for us.
I've nursed her since she was a tiny baby. She's my child too. I'd actually come to the audition to tell her that, look, I love your script, but the part is too small, I don't want to do it. And I met Claire, and she's so lovely. I was like, I still think the part is really small, but I'm going to do it. And I'm really glad I did, because I think it's not about the length of the part, it's just such a fabulous experience working on a script that is so rich at an emotional level, and just such a gorgeous crew and cast and such lovely people.
Claire, just so Joel and I know, we're going to do it. I'm Rana. We start here, do we? Or we walk by ourselves down in the middle of the street, walking along. We get caught up in it about here. We push our way through. Joel then lets himself go with it and ends up back the way he came in. Rana, meanwhile, works her way, freaks out. I end up about here. Oh my God, thank God that's over. Boom. That's the gag.
She's resolving, I guess, lots of things in her own life about her mother and her understanding of death. So these are things that she resolves throughout the film, and this is just one little moment where she allows someone to give her an insight.
This is for welcoming you to Calcutta, for you and for her. She's standing by you.
It's just me here.
Is this your mother standing by you?
Thanks.
Well, Justine and I have quite a strong collaboration. We've worked on a few projects together, and definitely Justine and myself wanted there to be an evolution with the characters. I think all the collaborators, all the heads of department are storytellers in the film. They bring storytelling to their area of expertise. So Justine really shaped a story through the costumes.
The storyline is that she's a corporate Sydney woman, and so she goes to the office every day. She has to dress and look very smart, and she's got a high-pressure job, and she gets paid a fortune. But she goes through a whole storyline in herself, and in the end, she actually becomes a lot more colourful, and it's almost like she blossoms. And in the final scene, she's surrendered a lot of her previous thoughts about her life and who she is and what's important and valuable. And she's gone through a whole journey, and so has her wardrobe. We went to every single market, we walked up and down streets, and I've just gone into lots and lots and lots and lots of shops and seen what you've had. And then I'll buy things, and then I'll just change them slightly to fit with my vision of the story.
Justine, I must say, is she's a real trooper. I mean, we go into Sialda market and all these very strange markets, looking from everything from beggar clothes to the hero heroine's clothing, and it's normal, it's natural. She can haggle better than I can in the bazaars.
I can be assisting you with anything you'll be needing: tours, temples, nightclubs, anything. I'm trading in all of the jacks.
So you're a jack of all trades?
That too.
Well, it was difficult to cast Krishna because I was torn between casting someone who was a native living in Calcutta actor, or if I should go for someone who, I mean, he is from Calcutta originally, but his parents now live in America, and he's been quite successful in America, but he does speak Bengali and he has a strong connection to the city.
So this is very refreshing because in New York I'm always continuously playing stereotypical roles of America's perspective of sort of South Asians in America, and that's like taxi drivers, doctors, even terrorists, unfortunately, right now. So, I always say, I've played medical assistants, everything from medical assistants to, terrorists to like medical terrorists. But, which is fine, it's TV, sometimes it's great, it's fine. But this is a great role for me to like really sink my teeth into and play a character. Yes, he is from a village, but he's a human being, and he's got feelings, and he gets hurt, and he gets excited. That is such a gift. I need to thank, Claire for doing that, and Jamie for making that happen. Because it's really letting me play and create and be a part of a beautiful story.
Shumat is one of those fascinating people that has sort of been brought up in two cultures, and he has, in a way, developed two personalities. One is American and one is Indian. And he has an American accent, and then he can just sort of pick up the phone and switch accents, and suddenly sounds like very Cosmo and from Bombay. And so he can play in both worlds. And I think it was great to have an actor like that in this movie, because he could really navigate the two worlds and the two sentiments, and the sense of humor that I think is appropriate to the story, he understood. So I think he was perfectly cast, and he did a great job of bringing in a certain amount of pathos and a certain amount of kind of Charlie Chaplin-esque kind of ham. He did both. So it was really fun working with him, actually.
I have a cousin who works at like Hotel Taj, and I know that, he speaks English quite well. And when I read the script, I thought of him, because there's also a constant observation and curiosity, which I think Krishna is all about. He knows things, he feels things, but he's also constantly observing things.
No one gets off this train until we say so.
Did they know that we were going to be here? Word must have passed around.
Okay, here we go. First position, shooting. Set.
Hey, this is my wife, Fiona. This is Scarlett.
So the character I'm playing is Scarlett, and she's a musician, gypsy, traveller, free spirit, and she's just travelling through India. She's been here maybe for about 3 months already, and she's friends with Joel's character Ben.
Isabel, I think, is just a magic, beautiful young actress. I think she's just absolutely ethereal, and I think it was very important for the story to have this fresh, young woman that would be a foil for Fiona in some ways, an offset or a mirror to her, but also in some ways challenge and provoke the marriage further. And she was never going to play the role two-dimensionally, which is very important to me, that she could bring humour to it and lightness and humanity as well.
Calcutta has very, very rich musical heritage, and we really wanted to tap into that for the film. Claire is also a composer and a musician, and one of her objectives was really to try and capture local music, but in a very traditional film score. I think Michael Yuzerski, the composer, managed to do that really difficult task very well.
I wanted to show that there's many different expressions of music in the film, and to capture Bengali music in one film is ridiculous to try and do, but at least demonstrating a contemporary viewpoint of music, and then showing a more traditional folk music, and then showing more indigenous music that a Western audience has never really heard before, felt like a nice fit to show us sort of three different expressions of Bengali music.
There was a couple of very difficult, challenging scenes that we had to do within the film. We always knew they would be challenging. But I think for me one of the most challenging but also one of the most rewarding may have been Lakshmi's funeral scene, shooting on the water. We don't have a lot of control when you're on the water. The boats are often constantly moving. It's very slow to move around. It's slow to get things on and off. We're shooting in a very confined space. Couldn't always get the angle that we wanted.
What was interesting on that day was just the location, which was so peaceful and beautiful, and we really had been on the streets up until that point. It had been really hot, and then we get to spend this whole day on the river, which was beautiful, and basically see the sunrise and then the sunset in the same location, all on this one day, and then experience the ritual of the death. And I think that was something that was new to most of the people on the crew.
I spoke to a number of Hindi priests about what was the most traditional way of having a funeral for a child, and there were so many different viewpoints on this. I kind of decided in the end to go with a very traditional funeral, which is to release the child back to the water. And this is one example in the film of a poetic expression of reality. It's not that it's a work of fiction, but in the reality of the film that we're creating, it works on a number of levels to have that happen for the film.
It's not a stop-start scenario like a normal shoot, that people are just doing their thing and that we're shooting around it, almost like a documentary style, so that we can capture like a real essence of a traditional Bengali wedding.
The effect of it was that every girl that was working on the movie, and there was a lot of girls in the crew, left thinking, gee, I want to get married.
The film needed to to finish on an uplifting, unified note. And having been to Bengali weddings before, I just find them such a celebration, and it felt like the relationship needed to be galvanised at this point of the story. So setting it within a Bengali wedding felt like the right point in which to do that. We had a Hindi priest there who conducted the ceremony completely correct as to how it should be, and everything was as authentic as it would be within a Bengali wedding.
মেয়েরা কালী পুজোটা দেখতে পেয়েছিল, তো কালী পুজোটা লাইটিং দেখেছিল, তো সেখানে লাইটিং একটা ভীষণভাবে মাত্রা পেয়েছিল মানে ওই সেটটার ব্যাপারে আর কি। ওখানে খুব কনসেপচুয়ালি কিছু ছিল না, লাইটিং ডিজাইনিং এবং জাস্ট বলা যায় সিকোয়েন্স ওয়াইজ যে এই জায়গাটাতে বেন গিটার দিয়ে বাজাবে, তার সামনেটাই বিয়ে বাড়ি মানে বিয়ে হবে, এবং তার ব্যাকড্রপে বড় বউ বসার অ্যারেঞ্জমেন্টটা এবং ওই গলিটা, এই তিনটে পার্টকে নিয়ে আমাকে বলা হয়েছিল, মানে গ্রাউন্ড প্ল্যানটা তৈরি হয়েছিল আর কি।
Only love is real. Only love is real.
It should feel like Fiona and Ben come into that wedding as visitors, but they're also very welcomed. And they also are invited to sit amongst the wedding party as the wedding vows are exchanged between the young couple being married. And in a thematic sense, that's meant to be important for the story, for Fiona and Ben.
যদি কেউ কথা না কয় ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা কেউ কথা না কয়, যদি সবাই থাকে মুখ ফিরায়ে সবাই করে ভয়, যদি সবাই থাকে মুখ ফিরায়ে সবাই করে ভয়, ও তবে পরাণ খুলে তবে পরাণ খুলে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো।
What brings you to my country?
My husband have adopted a little girl.
একলা চলো তবে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো।
I have to tell the truth. We have to see things for how they are.
She deserves a real family. A real family believe in each other.
Would you stop acting like a child and start acting like a man?
You must act out of love, not desperation or need.